Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Hirsch, and this week we're doing another movie review. This is Hands of the Ripper. Released in 1971 from Hammer Films, directed by Peter Safdie, based on a story by Edward Spencer Shue. So the film stars Eric Porter in the role of Dr. John Pritchard, Angharad Ries in the role of young Anna, who is basically the star of the film. Also stars Jane Merrill in the role of Laura, and Derek Godfrey as Mr. Dysart. So yes, Hands of the Ripper. One could almost say this is borderline slasher movie, as was Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, and both feature elements of Jack the Ripper, of course. This one even more so. Because it's directly involving Jack the Ripper. So, what happens in the film is Jack the Ripper is on the loose at the beginning, and cops are about to capture him, or at least they're hot on his trail, and he is on the run from the police when he goes back to his home, and he ends up murdering his wife. Because she finds out that he is the killer, and she freaks out, so he stabs her with the knife and murders her. And meanwhile, young Anna, who is his daughter, the daughter of Jack the Ripper, witnesses the murder, sees her own mother being murdered before her. Yeah, that's rough stuff. Not only is it bad enough that your father is a serial killer, but he murders your mother. That's pretty messed up. So obviously she's going to be severely traumatized by this event throughout her life. I mean, she just doesn't have a chance, And that's exactly the basis of this movie. So what happens is we flash forward to her as an adult, as a young lady. And she's working for this fortune teller, emphasis on fortune teller, because she's kind of more of a con woman, She's not exactly a legit fortune teller. She just kind of scams people out of their money, and Anna kind of acts as the ghost, supposedly hiding behind closed doors and pretending to be the voice of someone's lost relative or daughter or whatever, speaking from beyond the grave, So they kind of have a good scam going, but she also acts as a prostitute for the fortune teller, Granny, who's basically the madam as well, So she basically sells her out to prostitution as well, this young girl who's, I don't know, maybe 18, 19, or 20, so very young. And yeah, Angharad Ries, I think this is like her first major role in a movie, and she does a great job. She definitely represents the young, innocent girl who's lost in life, and she doesn't know what to do with herself, so she's kind of misguided by people, and something else happens, whenever she sees like a flashing light in her eye or gets a kiss from somebody, it brings about the Ripper, and it gives her the hands of the Ripper, and she becomes possessed by her father, Jack the Ripper, and brings about his murderous tendencies, and she picks people off one by one throughout the movie. And early on in the film, when one of her Johns, Mr. Dysart, who becomes kind of a major part of the plot as well, he witnesses Anna murder the granny, you know, brutally, you know. And what happens is, on the way out, as Mr. Dysart, after he witnesses the murder, he runs into Dr. John Pritchard, who is a psychiatrist. And so what happens is, since he knows basically that it was Anna who committed the murder, he has this idea where he would like to study the murderer and determine what makes her tick and why she has these murderous tendencies, you know. He wants to get inside the head of a serial killer. Because he wants to understand what makes her tick and why she commits murder, you know. And, yeah, he tries to get inside her head. Not only that, is he has some kind of love for her, some kind of connection, because she's such an innocent, young, beautiful girl, you know. So yeah, and it's not quite clear his full intentions throughout the movie. He kind of really bonds with her, and he kind of either falls in love with her or sees her as a daughter figure, you know, because he is old enough to be her father for sure, you know. So it's never quite clear whether he's actually in love with her and wants her to be his future wife, or wants her to be like her daughter, you know. But at any rate, he takes her into and has her move in with his beautiful big mansion, you know. He's very rich, you know. And yeah, he's a very prominent member of society, very rich, and well known throughout the community. John Pritchard, he's like a very brilliant guy, very well spoken, and he's played brilliantly, I think, by Eric Porter. You know, he does such a great job. Dr. Pritchard is very charming, highly intelligent, very well dressed, and very well spoken, and Eric Porter is the perfect, proper Englishman, you know. Yeah, excellent performance by Eric Porter, as is the entire cast in this movie. The acting is definitely on point, some of the best that Hammer has to offer. And being 1971, this is kind of when Hammer was starting to go downhill as far as, you know, success-wise, you know, because they were trying to inject more nudity and blood and gore into their films, and this film is no exception. This is probably the goriest Hammer film ever made, I would say. There's some really nasty kills. One of the kills is Dr. John Pritchard has this maid who kind of tends to Anna, you know, dresses her up, bathes her, clothes her, you know. And she's very, very nice, but once Anna sees like this piece of jewelry, it's like this big beautiful gem that she's about to wear, you know, she's getting dressed to go to the big ball, you know, in a beautiful gown, and when the maid puts the gem on her, it shines on her face, and boom, she goes into the trance, you know. And she's looking in the mirror, and she smashes the mirror against the wall, and it becomes like a knife and stabs the maid. And it's brutal, you know. You see it go right in her neck, and that's rare for Hammer, you know, to get that brutal, you know. But yeah, later on in Hammer, they wanted to try and be like, they wanted to compete with American films that were more brutal and more realistic, and gorier, you know. Yeah. I will say the score in this film is kind of bizarre. You know, there are moments where the score is very, like, majestic and beautiful, and it's like, doesn't quite match the tone of the film, really, where we're dealing with dark substances here. And the tone is dark of the film and very gothic, but yet the score sometimes is a little bit off, you know. If I had to say one negative about the film, it would be that. Other than that, I think this is a Hammer classic, you know. Everything about this film is just classic Hammer. It's got the beautiful Gothic mansions, and at the end we see this huge Gothic building called the Whispering Gallery, and that's where the finale takes place, and it's a very epic finale. I love it. And I think Anna is a great character, you know. Because she's so conflicted, where she is a very nice girl, very innocent, very charming, beautiful, but at the same time there's this inner conflict, and it's like tragic, really, because it's not really her fault of what's happening to her. She becomes literally possessed by the soul of Jack the Ripper. And even though in the beginning she's kind of pretending to be a fortune teller of sorts, she does feel connection to the spirit world. And in doing so, Dr. Pritchard has her see this more legit kind of fortune teller who just nails everything right on the head and tells all about her being the daughter of Jack the Ripper. She never says that, but she alludes to it. But she plays out the whole scenario where she witnesses the mother get killed and everything, you know. She nails it. And then we kind of see that young Anna does have a connection with the spirit world, and there may be something more to it than just her being traumatized by the events, you know, that she is legitimately possessed by the soul of Jack the Ripper. We also have young Laura, played by Jane Merrow, who's a blind woman, and Dr. Pritchard's son Michael is about to get married to her, and she kind of becomes a major part of the plot, you know. And Jane Merrow is a very prominent actress. She's been in some big movies, you know. And she does a fantastic job, you know. Even with what little she kind of has to work with, she doesn't really have a lot to do in the film, but she gives a great performance regardless. And once she kind of falls prey to Anna, you think something bad's going to happen to her once they get to the top of the Whispering Gallery there. You know? And it has a great finale that's very emotional, and Anna has such a connection to Dr. John Pritchard. I think she loves him as well, whether it's romantic love or the love of a father figure, but she kind of calls out to him, and it becomes very tragic and emotional, and I love it. This is a great Hammer film, you know. This is one of the best Hammer movies, I think, so I highly recommend Hands of the Ripper. And there is some good gore for you gorehounds out there. If you think Hammer isn't always up to snuff when it comes to blood and gore, this is the movie for you, because this has some great kills on top of this being a great story with great acting and the great Gothic feel. This has everything going for it. It touches on all the notes that Hammer is well known for, as well as bringing the blood and the gore. So this movie works on all fronts, and I highly recommend it. 2 devil horns up for Hands of the Ripper. Run and buy it on Synapse Blu-ray. This is an excellent release from Synapse with all kinds of great special features. And that's it for my review of Hands of the Ripper, and thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Gershon, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared.